Hello and welcome to another narrative review. After dealing with the first Shin Megami Tensei game, and you could tell how well that went, I decided I need a break in the format. Plus I haven't done one of these in a long time, though I honestly hope this video would be shorter. Before we truly begin though, I just want to thank my friend Lewis, who you may know from our crossover review of Mega Man X Command Mission, for providing a brand new look for the channel. Honestly, ever since coming back, I felt the change was needed. And yeah, the font was inspired by the text format used in the old Shin Megami Tensei games. Considering what videos are currently popular and my own personal hard-on for the series, I figured it was appropriate. You can check out his Twitch over here as he streams stuff on occasion. Force him to stream Skies of Arcadia. Also, it's a time-honored tradition that I use Heihachi's ass when it comes to fan service games, even if there are times I forgot about that. However, Heihachi died in the latest Tekken game, so unless he's resurrected as some god of destruction or something, which, well, let's face it, with the Tekken games, that wouldn't be too far off. So, in order to replace him, I decided to use Sexy Buff Kazuma Kiryu from Yakuza. I mean, you're not gonna fight me on this. He's just so magnificent. Years ago, I reviewed this series starting with Shinobi versus and claimed some of the story stuff was good, though I don't feel I dug too deep into everyone, especially when there were over 20 playable characters. 22 if you count Rin and Daidoji. I tried to fix this with stuff like Saviors of the Tale and a top 10, but starting from this remake should be a good way to explain the series. There's also another reason I haven't covered this series in a while. The DLC. Why? Quite simple. It's all on the disc. I suspected as much with Shinobi Versus, and indeed, this game does have the DLC on the disc too. But I know of another controversy many people probably want me to talk about, how Sony censored this game by taking out a feature present in all Senran Kagura titles. But here's the thing, you confuse me with someone who actually gives a crap. Yeah, I don't care about the change. Yes, Sony has apparently been trying to censor titles more, sometimes very stupidly, but it didn't matter much to me. Angry fans didn't help my view either. I've been told how much this change hurts them, how Sony dared to remove the reason people play. Gee, I thought the main gameplay was the real lure. How sad are those particular people who only mess around with the girls in the dressing room? The only other change I can think of is not having the shining sensors appear after stripping a foe, but that's it. Plus, I'm one of the few crazy people who play for the story and characters, since a lot of them are legitimately interesting. Unfortunately, at least half the story isn't all that good. See, despite remaking the original game on the 3DS, both stories are mostly unaltered. The only big change is the presentation of the plot and how the menu is handled for each school. And they do change over time to reflect the moods of the characters, unless you beat the game. The latter is something I appreciate as it helps set the mood for the story and how characters felt at the time, and made it more satisfying to get certain things, like seeing Homura finally smiling. The former, well, there are some things it does better than the original. Scenes in both the finales are improved immensely, as are the boss fights. Certain spots though make areas feel empty and lifeless, really showing how at the end of the day, all the money goes to the jiggle effects. Hell, the sky shouldn't even be red at the Hebijo headquarters. There's also one major area where the presentation fails, but we'll get to it later. Other than those spots though, I really dig the upgraded graphics from the 3DS. But what is Senran Kagura? Well, for those who don't know and are still confused and willing to endure spoilers for this game, it's about a bunch of high school girls who are also ninjas, most of whom who have tits the size of bowling balls, and is a game made by perverts for perverts. AKA a fan service game. And if you continue to argue against this when there is clear evidence that Takaki made a perverse game, well,
you're an idiot.
There are two sides to the conflict. Good Shinobi and evil Shinobi. The good ones tend to follow a certain set of rules, likely to make themselves more dignified, and only the best of the best can be a Shinobi. Failure isn't really tolerated, and even the slightest screw-up could potentially cost you your status, if not your life. At least if someone finds out anyway. The evil Shinobi on the other hand have far greater numbers, and will accept just about anyone for any reason. Not to say the training is any easier. The morality of the Shinobi is emphasized with Homura, the lead character of the Hebijo route. I already went over her story in a Saviors of the Tale episode, so I'll try to be brief when it comes to her character, keyword being try. Her family were good Shinobi and tried to make sure Homura got into a good school, but they were incredibly strict and not exactly helping her mental state, so whenever she was near her tutor, she felt comfortable enough to tell him about her situation of being a Shinobi in training, and how all of it was stressing her out. He soon reveals how he was an evil Shinobi in disguise, taking his time in confirming Homura's status to both make sure he was right, and just to torment her. As he laughs at the tears she sheds considering that she actually loved the guy, Homura goes into a blind rage. Well, okay, Homura doesn't do that, but she might as well have since he ends up in the hospital, and she doesn't remember what happened during it all. Because of this incident, as well as giving up her secret identity and likely causing property damage given what happened, she's denied the right to enter a good shinobi school. It was so bad she got disowned by her family, left on the streets to fend for herself. Now I should note characters like Asuka and Katsuragi have also done a lot of fighting on their end. Asuka even mentioning beating up bullies when she was younger. But she likely had more control of herself and wasn't setting people on fire. Or breaking limbs at the very least. And this is totally excusable when it comes to delinquents who have no powers because, yeah, there are some things I am able to explain, but even I can't understand why this is the case. Then again, you try explaining how big-tittied high school ninjas kicked your ass. We'll cover the Hanzo route first since this is the one you should play first, though it's also the worst route since a lot of the Hebijo girls are really one-note, and not given a whole lot of time to show off their personalities. There's another thing I failed to mention. Both routes are canon, but for different systems. For instance, the Hanzo route, this is canonical for the Nintendo timeline, and even parts of it will be retconned thanks to the sequel, Deep Crimson on the 3DS. The Hebijo timeline is technically the one that's canon for the Sony timeline, though of course some things got retconned because I guess they couldn't afford to give Homura a victory. If this confuses you, welcome to video games. The 5 ninja of the Hanzo school are as follows. Katsuragi, a blonde who loves to feel up other girls and touch their chests a lot. She loves to fight too, though in later games, this trait comes up way less in favor of her pervertedness. It's a shame since her love to brawl is very enjoyable and makes her one of the more fun characters to follow. Her parents also abandoned her one day, though it's later revealed it was because they failed the mission and refused to commit seppuku, thus becoming renegade shinobi. This is brought up maybe twice and has no real resolution. It's eventually brought back up in Shinobi Versus and ignored for all of eternity afterwards. So sadly, she doesn't contribute a whole lot to the story aside from helping her rival Hikage with her emotional issues by offering her the taste of defeat. And thankfully this doesn't lead to a Baki situation. What do I mean by that? I would give you context, but you're better off watching the show. It's stupidly insane. If you want more disappointment though, enter Ikaruga, the one who likely should be leading the team given her age, but doesn't due to self-esteem issues or something like that. Her backstory is told really early, life described as being an orphan adopted by a wealthy family for the sole purpose of carrying on their legacy, mainly since their own offspring lacked any talent for shinobi skills. Fun fact, he's the only playable male Senran Kagura character and only in Deep Crimson. You know, I'm starting to slowly see why people defend that one. Anyway, he resents her as well, leading to some conflict that only happens once on both routes, both times equally pathetic as he is simply outclassed. She also meets Yomi, who hates her family since they are rich and never bother to help out those in Japan, choosing instead to donate money overseas mostly for a publicity stunt. Apart from that, Ikaruga's involvement in the plot is extremely minimal. She has a chance to tell off an investor of Hebijo in the final battle, and the plotline with Yomi is left unresolved with the latter still hating her, and that's about it. I'll dive more into this conflict with the Hebijo route. In fact, if I keep barely giving any info about the other girls, expect it to be because the Hebijo route offers way more. Yagyu is the one with the eye patch, the level-headed member of the team who wants to protect the cute girl of the team, Hibari. What drives their friendship is related to some trauma Yagyu endured, specifically losing her younger sister due to a car accident. Because Hibari acts like such a child, for a brief moment, she believed her sister was alive again. A strong friendship was born, but it also kind of leads to the detriment of Hibari's abilities, as she over-relies on Yagyu for help and is even spoiled sometimes with candy. She even lacks confidence in her abilities and starts to hate it when her friends try to cover for her too much. For a good chunk of the game, she kinda feels like the main protagonist given how much growth her character goes through. You might have noticed I neglected to mention the real main character, Asuka. That's because she doesn't really become relevant until the next to last chapter. She's your typical main lead, wanting to become stronger, very good at making friends, and cheerful to a near fault. There's nothing too outstanding about her, and if you don't believe me, Asuka says it herself, explaining how each of her friends excelled in certain tasks. Well, there is one thing to note. She is the granddaughter of the legendary ninja known as Hanzo, who might as well be Master Roshi given how perverted he is. At least there's nothing toilet related regarding his humor. And yes, this was the same Hanzo the school was named after. There's something I could mention about real life here, so let's just skip that and skip to what you really want. The first chapter mostly deals with build-up and exploring the team dynamic, what makes each character themselves. The second chapter has them confront their rivals as they make their presence known, all to steal something called the Super Secret Ninja Scroll, Yes, really. Look, just because I said I like this story doesn't mean it lacks stupid things. I think the fact that these ninjas wear dumber outfits than the ones in Naruto is evidence enough. Anyway, Homura and Hikage fight Asuka and Katsuragi, with the latter two losing, even as the others have their clothes torn. A lot of this route is basically the Hebijo girls acting like Raccoon during the fight on Namek, minus the bit with Goku. After the power gap is established, the teacher of Hanzo, Kirya, has his backstory explained with how he used to be a top shinobi, but decided on being a teacher, mostly to avoid his deadly allergy of dying. Really, the idea of being disposable is also what bothers him too. At the same time, he realizes how coddling his students could potentially make things worse. There is a reason for this and relates to one of his previous students, Rin. She trained super hard to become a shinobi, and if she failed the test, it seemed like that was it for her for some reason. I don't know, maybe one of the dolls was meant to kill her if she failed. It's never explained properly, but it does help show how perfect the good shinobi want their tools to be. And in the end, that's what the good shinobi are to those higher up. Tools meant to die. It's likely another reason why Homura was rejected, fearing she may have been too much of a wild card after brutally beating someone up. Rin as a result ended up dying, though unknown to Kirya, she faked her death, going under the new name Suzune. The point is, Kirya didn't want to help his students in fear they can no longer stand on their own. However, he isn't dumb enough to not train his students for the trials ahead. Though as I explained earlier, pretty much everyone loses their duel except for Yagyu. Oh right, her rival Mirai. Her shtick is that she wants attention. If you fail to give it to her, she'll kill you and act crazy while doing so. Except she's the weakest and easily beaten, so forgive me if I don't feel threatened. The real scary one is Haruka, a woman who loves teasing and making fun of Hibari, even threatening to turn her into a wax doll for her amusement. Asuka also engages Homura and they argue about what is the right path, which only shows how naive Asuka is regarding the shinobi world, and how one note with power Homura is, without much else to her personality. There's sadly nothing interesting for me to pick apart. One thing to note is the sixth student. See, the Fabulous Five were led away so there would be no one defending the scroll at the school. Except there was, a powerful woman known as Daidoji. This cross between Akuma and Jotaro was actually a classmate of Rin, and refuses to graduate till she has one final showdown with her rival, still believing Rin is alive. And that's all she contributes beyond a secret boss fight after the game is over, and being one of the overpowered characters you could play as. Sadly, I didn't have as much fun playing as her since it's very easy to get out of her combos. You could see why she didn't make my top 10. But if we were judging by looks, that would be a whole other story. Look at them abs. The third chapter goes more into Hibari's own personal struggles and feeling like the weakest, haunted by the words of Haruka, and growing irritated when Yagyu keeps trying to protect her. This leads to Hibari to strike out on her own, and it goes about as well as you expect. Her need to be independent leads to being trapped by the Hebijo at their training ground. Yagyu still finds her, but gets shot with a poisoned bullet. And this is one of the few bits of art that really struck at my heart, since you can feel the dread with Hibari given her frightful expression, aided with the lack of music building up all the tension, all as she keeps waiting, wanting someone to blame her for Yagyu's condition, because no matter what, she thinks this entire situation is her fault. It's a relatable situation, I feel, and makes me wish there was more art that conveyed such strong emotions. Kudos. Enraged and wanting to take responsibility, Hibari wants to storm Hebijo on her own, all without telling her friends about this. Kirya seems all too keen to help out, telling her how to get the scroll needed to help defeat Hebijo. She does so, confronting Haruka with it, where she reveals that the Kirya Hibari conversed with was just a puppet. And to make the situation worse, the scroll is worthless. Well, okay, it takes a certain amount of aptitude to use it, especially when it can put quite a strain on the user. For Hibari, she isn't even worthy of using it and is pretty much screwed, giving up right there and then after a brief fight to the will of Haruka. Or does she? Yeah, this game loves its cliffhangers too. Hibari decides to enroll into the academy, claiming that she is so ashamed she can't go back to her school and just enrolls into Hebijo. In addition to getting the Homura backstory I already explained, Hibari does get to know the other girls. Barely. The only one who really matters is Haruka, since we get to see how the two interact with one another, and how Haruka is more than just some buxom beauty who turns people into dolls. She genuinely wants Hibari to be her friend, though is suspicious of Hibari wanting the scroll back. Hibari is even tempted to get the scroll back right away, but Haruka intervenes and tells Hibari off in her own way. Since if Hibari does get the scroll now, well, what's next? She's still not strong enough to handle herself well against any of the elite shinobi, so for now, just stick around. Despite not really getting to know the other girls, this was one of the few good points to the Hanzo route, and made me like Hibari more, especially as she would grow to be a better character in other games. She doesn't get a lot of time to bond with the group though, as Mirai tells Yagyu that Hibari joined Hebijo, which Yagyu takes very well. Did I mention I really like the Scorpion movie? Her friends try to stop her, leaving Yakuya to basically tell them to piss off for failing to watch over Hibari. At the headquarters of Hebijo, she bashes her way through, the injury she sustained opening all the while. It's not until the rest of Team Asuka comes in are they successful in getting Hibari back, though with no scroll. Back with Kirya, he notifies the team that without the scroll, none of them are going to be official shinobi as studies are suspended, thus leaving them to train once more to get ready for a war with Hebijo. Hibari is the only one against this plan, having seen their studies and whatnot and realizing how similar both schools are. Killing each other seems wrong. This argument would hold a lot of weight if we actually got to see more of the personalities of more than just one Hebijo girl. And as if to give a lazy answer, Hibari is convinced to fight thanks to Asuka training herself to death, saying how there's only one way to communicate, through fighting. Ryu from Street Fighter will be proud at least. Chapter 4 is kinda wasted mostly as more build up for the final battles. Apart from Asuka suddenly being the main character, we do get one of the better scenes with Homura, as she describes why she wants to fight. To feel alive. Which, given how she was disowned from her family, it kinda makes sense. The thrill of life and death battles are probably the only thing able to spark some life into her. This leaves Chapter 5 to be the finale, which also feels wasted as the resolution to a lot of these fights. I feel nothing. Maybe for Haruka, but that's it. The game even decides to be uber dark by having the girls take poison pills after their loss, as if to add more tragedy that feels unearned. And pointless because, spoilers, they don't actually die. I mean, I guess they do at some point since Mirai takes a bullet for Homura, and Asuka does seemingly kill Homura when she goes berserk. Speaking of which, Homura does start to feel emotional about the death of her comrades, claiming she never expected to feel anything like this. At this point, she wants victory for her fallen teammates, and uses the scroll to achieve ultimate power, only to seemingly die against Asuka. Alright, Homura, prepare for your evil ways to be stopped. My friends, all of them are gone. I never imagined how much this could hurt. I thought of them only as comrades, and yet they still believed me. And now they're dead! Damn it! Okay, I'm starting to feel like the bad guy here. I am the sword and shield of my friends. Oh, and then a massive Yoma named Orochi suddenly appears to battle Asuka. If you're wondering why I never brought up a giant demon, it's only because the game never properly built up to this either. I mean, in the remake you can actually fight Yoma, who are just tougher, reskin enemies, but this still comes out of left field. There is some dialogue hinting Homura's own despair and rage caused this beastie to appear. Spoilers, that's bull crap. Even if it is supposedly the case, it would be retcon that someone else did this. Someone who doesn't even show up on this route. Anyway, Asuka beats the thing, the Hebijo girls are revealed to be alive, the end. If it seems like I'm rushing to finish this, it's only because I am. There's nothing I can really analyze or care about here. Asuka's an okay protagonist, but Hibari ends up stealing most of the show, to the point where my first time playing the game, I thought it was gonna do a bait and switch regarding who were the main hero and villains. I'll at least say this about Orochi. The boss fight here is significantly better than the one on the 3DS. Other than that, the Hanzo route is mostly just okay. Deep Crimson only did better by helping to give the Hebijo girls more personality they desperately needed, and retconning certain elements of the plot. I really don't get why they didn't just redo the Hanzo story. Again, did the budget go to only having shinier boobs? As I said before in previous videos, had I only stuck with this route, the 3DS version would have just been a broken mess that was a decent distraction, especially since I lacked beat-em-up games back then, as opposed to now where I easily trip over some. I really need to get the other ending in River City Girls one day. Now we have the Hebijo route, focusing more on the other girls, and unlike in the Hanzo route, we actually get the backstories of everyone, except Homura, who has a few things, but it really does want you to play the Hanzo story first, since that explains why she's in the school. We'll come back to her later, so let's see how the others have changed. Mirai is the biggest focus for a while since she is the weakest of the group, as well as the newbie. She's less crazy about wanting people to notice her, but the reason she joined the school is fairly... well... I aim to be the best shinobi I can possibly be. And soon, oh so soon, I plan to get some sweet vengeance. And yes, I know she uses guns. I'm not trusted with firearms anymore. Not after the incident. Anyway, Mirai is still attack crazy given her motivation to kill some school kids who made fun of her smaller body type. Ignoring the obvious fan service, it's kind of understandable and relatable to a certain extent. As someone who was bullied, revenge is something I often thought of. Admittedly not to this extent, but still. Mirai also belonged to a family of good shinobi, similar to Homura, and had to transfer to Hebijo to do such a thing. Her inferiority is brought up often, such as during a training exercise that exposes her underwear with cute bears on them, constantly being teased by Haruka, or even during a later part in the story we'll cover along with Homura. Hikage is roughly the same as she was in the Hanzo route, though we do get some interactions with her teammates, demonstrating how helpful she can be to them, despite her whole emotionless shtick. Also, in the original Hanzo route, she honestly couldn't stop smiling and looked like a serial killer. They actually did fix this in this version. And to be fair, it's more like she doesn't understand how to properly emote, since she is able to do nice things such as help buy Yomi some lunch when she lacks money, try and understand Mirai's emotional problems, and her rivalry with Katsuragi, which is roughly the same, has more focus on Hikage's issues with her emotions, and even she is the one to ask for help regarding this. Yomi's deal is almost the same, but more humanizing as we see her struggle financially and trying to be like a big sister to the Hebijo girls. Rather than it being brief, the Hebijo route takes the time to expand on their issues, and even them being friendly with each other before Yomi finally remembers why she is angry at Ikaruga's family. After their first ever fight with each other, Yomi discovers someone is putting on a one-woman show for the slums and even donating money to help them out, about 30,000 yen. However, Yomi flips her lid when the masked person is in fact Ikaruga, saying how since Ikaruga is rich, she should be able to afford to send more money than that. She even compares numbers, explaining why she is so poor. Whatever money she gets, she puts towards the benefit of the slums, a cool 300,000 yen per month. She understood what it was like being so poor, having nothing, and didn't want others to suffer the same fate, and why it's so frustrating to see someone clearly capable of helping them instead choosing to help others for a publicity stunt and giving people pennies when they clearly need more. Okay, so instead of more of this, we got more bean sprout jokes. Just let that sink in for a minute. Then again, comedy fan service game, I don't know. Seriously, the reason she didn't make my own top 10 was because the joke was so damn worn out in future games about the stupid bean sprout. Maybe I love this so much simply because I know how much rich assholes take advantage of people nowadays, so hearing of Yomi's story of how her parents work till they die just to get enough money for their daughter, that feels real to me, as does her genuine anger. And yet despite it all, Ikaruga takes every word and kneels, not wanting to use any excuse to escape the blame that should fall more to her parents. Yomi gets angry enough to transform and attempts to strike, and misses, likely wanting to provoke Ikaruga into fighting, to take out her frustration properly. But Ikaruga, having a good heart, keeps driving her insane, until she picks up a scroll. Taking a cue from the Hanzo route, it's the same Shinobi family tree scroll she made there, and Yomi realizes all this time, Ikaruga was adopted. She wasn't born into nobility like she originally thought she was, shattering her worldview a bit. She even realizes why Ikaruga's brother may hate the adopted sibling, having met him during an eating contest that... I'm not even going to provide context for this image. Let it torture you for a bit. Ikaruga is given a bit more depth from all this too, not wanting to make any kind of excuse and genuinely wanting to understand people, even from someone who, if a bit crazier, would likely burn her house down. And if it means reducing her status, she will do so, all to try and learn from how she went wrong, perhaps improve herself too. Their friendship truly begins here, able to blossom despite the natural law of good and evil shinobi being mortal enemies. Even during their final battle, when they assume one of them had to die, Yomi is worried about Ikaruga, nearly thinking she killed her. I wish we got more out of this friendship, and it would be expanded upon in the sequel, Shinobi Versus. Haruka is the second most important character in the story. Her personality is almost the same, though we do get some expanded bits, like trying to be helpful to her teammates such as Homura when she first arrived, or with Mirai and trying to toughen her up in her own way, or torture her with endless teasing and many other tasks that would normally warrant an arrest. With regards to Homura, she's the one who tells her how Hebijo works, how some people skirt around rules such as fighting and killing by calling it independent training. Not helping the underhanded tactics are the elite positions, which all 5 girls hold, do gain some perks other students don't, such as leading a team and having a nice room to hang out in. Such a thing makes Homura think everyone is her enemy, but Haruka keeps trying to correct that line of thinking, to no avail. So being hunted by students for her spot in the elites is certainly a reason why Homura holds little regard for people. Haruka at least tries to say how even if they don't like each other, they are still in this mess together, though even when she says not to get close to people, well, she ends up getting close to people. In fact, this is a good time to go into Chapter 3. During the first 2 chapters, there's the usual build-up with the Hebijo team with themselves, and some with the students of Hanzo, like Yomi talking with Karuga. They end up meeting at a spa during a vacation, unaware of their status till Asuka's grandfather ruins things by being a pervert. Despite the tension afterwards, Homura is able to resist the urge to throw down since they have no orders and are currently naked. And let's face it, Hanzo would be getting some pictures in, even if his granddaughter was involved. This kinda makes sense given what was happening on the trip, as Homura took her job very seriously in making her team happy. This led me to believe Homura sees having comrades as more of a job, but at the same time, with how she talks to Mirai during certain scenes, it's possible she tries not to allow herself to get too close, so it could be more like she prefers to have control of the situation, to know how to handle things without being blind. After all, being blind is what resulted in her getting kicked out of her own home. There's another reason most likely, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, after getting back, they get their mission to steal the stupidly named scroll from Hanzo, and Homura is eager for the idea. As they form teams, Haruka reveals more of a dark side to her, as she has male shinobi whom well, they are supreme masochists and love being toyed and beaten by her. I wish I had a joke, but no comment. Well, okay, she does actually care about their well-being as she wants them to make it out alive, so I'm assuming this is all consensual and she didn't torture them so badly they became this way. The true answer we may never know, since Haruka can be a bit pushy as seen in a later game. She manages to find the scroll, though her minions manage to open it. Well, since this thing didn't do much in the Hanzo route, what could possibly...
できるわけなまだあんたたちに
Oh no! So, we have reached one of the reasons why I love this route. Opening the scroll turns weaker shinobi into mindless monsters wanting to harm and kill people. Haruka tearfully kills her obedient boys while Mirai is suffering from the effects of the scroll, narrowly avoiding such a fate. But the result is their team members are killed by the elites and they have to retreat, resulting in the battles with their rivals. Mirai is shooken up and tries to stall Yagyu so the others can escape, nearly getting killed for her troubles since the shinobi is clearly out of her league. Yagyu is at least impressed with Mirai's skills and sympathizes with her plight, so lets her go. Haruka doesn't show too much grief, though she goes overboard in wanting Hibari to join the school, coming onto her quite strongly. Chances are she wants to do something to get over the grief ASAP, as Mirai remarks how she still seemed hurt by the events later on. Mirai is still hit the hardest by all of this though, fearful of turning into a monster and harming her teammates. Even during another vacation to recover from the incident, she can't really relax, and when Hikage tries to probe her for information, Mirai ends up running away from the team. As the gang try to find their friend, Hikage's own backstory is finally explained. I waited this long because of this scene in particular. See, Hikage used to be an orphan, but ran away from the orphanage because she was bored, and hooked up with a gang just because they watched out for her. One member became like a big sister and welcomed Hikage's strange emotional quirks, a woman by the name of Hinata. Despite her sadistic nature in a fight, Hikage wanted to be near her. Unfortunately, the gang violence got worse, and when Hinata went alone to try and save her gang from some trouble, she vanished. Hikage was the only one who believed she would never ditch her. She eventually found a body in the dumpster dreamed of life, and it turned out to be Hinata's. The incident would be the first time she ever cried and affected her deeply. So much so that when Mirai is found in a similar position, she breaks down. Of course, Mirai was just playing dead, though is surprised to see Hikage cry since emotions are quite rare for the Snake Girl. Hikage, unable to fully understand Mirai's problems, lets her go, only for Homura to soon intervene. In earlier chapters, Homura has tried to encourage Mirai in her own way, specifically through fighting and how not to just run away just because something seems impossible. What she says is kinda similar here, in how Mirai shouldn't be afraid and should just become stronger. Power is seen as a comfort for Homura, for it's all she has left, and the events at the school only help justify that. It's why even with the scroll turning people berserk, she isn't worried since it won't affect her. At the same time, of all the other characters, Mirai is the one she tries to help the most. Maybe it's sympathy from her first time as a first year in Hebijo, with how she was constantly targeted. Maybe she sees something similar in Mirai that compels her to try and help. The bond they share is why I started to think that maybe all of this wasn't only just a job for Homura, and why she starts to get upset when Hibari comes to Hebijo in Chapter 4. Much like in the Hanzo route, Hibari joins Hebijo, but there's a bonus. She brings the scroll they wanted as extra insurance, as opposed to in the Hanzo route she wanted to take it back. As a reminder, Hebijo failed to steal the scroll as Asuka was able to get it back during a fight with Homura. Unlike in the other route, Homura is less than keen on the Hanzo girl joining, but is even more concerned when Haruka becomes attached to Hibari as well, especially when Haruka was the one to tell her that getting close to people was a problem. Haruka sees no issue and says she can perform as well as ever, which Homura takes her up on, though she beats the puppet master in the process. Haruka still claims she can fight well while loving Hibari, and even reveals how Yomi has befriended Ikaruga, which finally makes Homura snap. Being friends with the actual enemy forces a team meeting to be held, where they are split down the middle. Homura, Hikage, and Mirai believe in power being absolute, while Haruka, Yomi, and Hibari oppose the idea. We finally get Haruka's backstory of how she was treated as a doll by her mother, forced to dress up constantly without any regards to her feelings. And this was because the mother was trying to cope with the fact Haruka's father was having an affair, among other things like being the kind of rich asshole Yomi will want to stab in the face. It happened for so long, well...
Sometimes I just want to burn it down. Burn the whole school down to the ground.
Yeah, she was prepared to burn her entire house down. Suzune managed to stop her and help come up with an alternate idea. She taught Haruka a puppet-style technique, allowing her to control her father, get arrested for all of his crimes, and alleviate some pressure for her mother. However, over time, Haruka didn't want to live with her anymore, so enrolled into Hebijo. Her puppetry technique helped young greatly, even though she never came from a shinobi family. This is relevant for two reasons. The first is Suzune pulling Haruka aside and saying how she could easily end this situation with the skill, though Haruka refuses, wanting to sell this the right way. Suzune is happy with the decision, claiming how she has grown up. The two sides agree to a battle to see who is right, and Haruka even lets Homura have her team back her up, all to prove the power of love will win this fight. It doesn't, however. She manages to put Homura on the back foot, but the fiery shinobi simply has far more drive for victory, forcing Haruka to give up and even acknowledge how maybe love isn't everything, until Homura stops her. When Homura fought Asuka earlier, she was very against the idea of friendship, not caring if someone was affected by the scroll again, and striving only for power. Even in Hebijo, power was a great comfort for her. It's only when she helped Mirai and got closer to the other elites did she start to feel the change, and fighting Haruka helped her realize how much stronger friendship can be, leading both of them to agree a balance of both is ideal. During the second match with Hikage vs Yomi, Hikage loses on purpose since she feels someone who can understand the feelings of their comrades deserved to win over her, showing the strong friendship they possessed since the beginning of the game. And Mirai loses because she's Mirai, and also because Hibari is presumably possessed by the devil. So, remember how I said there were two reasons Haruka's backstory was relevant? Well, it's because Hibari was actually being manipulated all this time. Yagyu arrives to break the trick and takes her back, and assumes Haruka is the one responsible for it. However, Haruka is just as surprised and left heartbroken from this, leaving Homura to try and comfort her. Who could have done such a thing? Surely it couldn't have been Dogen, an investor of Hebijo who only briefly appeared in the story just a few moments ago. I'm sure the man funding a bunch of people he once trained to kill in his name is totally trustworthy. They don't have long to think about this, as Hanzo invades Hebijo and uses the scroll to make all the students go nuts. On the one hand, that's extremely evil for the Hanzo students to do, and it's never really brought up aside from Asuka saying how they had no choice. Their personalities make it hard for me to believe they would willingly let others slaughter themselves, and others, especially when some of them spill into the town. It borders on character assassination. On the other hand, this really hammers in the point of how good and evil are really just words. Just name them Law and Chaos Shinobi and we can finally have the perverted Shin Megami Tensei fantasy people want. There is at least another scene with Homura and Asuka as they eat at Hanzo's restaurant, a neutral zone for both parties, both agreeing to a fair fight to the death after they question the nature of good and evil shinobi. However, unlike with the Hanzo route, the Hebijo girls win their rounds and try to avoid killing their rivals. Haruka even cuts her obsession with Hibari, which is bullcrap if you play it as the Versus, but the point is, everyone is able to get some resolution with their rivals and spares their lives. Until they suddenly vanish in a red glow. Homura senses this and finds Dogen, who then reveals they are being sacrificed to summon the monster Orochi, the same final boss on the Hanzo route. He turns into a full-on supervillain, laughing and claiming how this is what Homura always wanted, to have great power at the cost of her friends. Homura calmly handles this matter in the same way she deals with that one person currently in the hospital. Except not really. Look, if they didn't want me to use those clips, they shouldn't have given Scorpion his own movie. Actually, I think I would enjoy it more if we got this Hanzo instead of this perverted dumbass. Seriously, imagine this Hanzo actually having a family that wasn't slaughtered. I had a point to make, right? Anyway, Homura cuts his ass in half and has to find a way to make sure Orochi isn't summoned, even finding it awkward to ask for a ceasefire now considering the damage done so far. Unfortunately, Asuka uses the scroll on herself, leading to her body barely able to handle it all. Realizing how disrespectful it would be to stop the fight right now, and possibly seeing little point in anything else with her friends gone, she decides to have one last duel with her rival. Believing she has found true strength in acknowledging all the friendships, Homura pulls out the seventh sword. becoming Crimson Homura. I should note this sword was only referenced once in Hebijo route, but that's more than what the Hanzo route did. Though she wins, it does end up making sure Asuka isn't the one used in the ritual, and she entrusts defeating Orochi to her. I would say that's kind of a stupid move to leave the beaten lady now to deal with a giant monster, but after turning a castle of students on each other and helping to kill them all, well, no offense, Asuka has this coming. And what follows is an awesome finale, with Homura clawing her way through Orochi's stomach, suddenly feeling the presence of her friends. Sadly, unlike the 3DS version, we don't get other enemies here beyond the bosses, which I felt added to the creepiness, like it was taking the souls of weaker shinobi and warping them to monstrous figures for Homura to fight. However, the boss fights are different enough from the ones in the story mode, particularly Haruka, who serves as the final boss, and I actually love how she's handled here, as it's creepy to see her with darkened eyes. Hell, even those regular eyes are very scary to me. Homura has to fight them all to free them of Orochi's corruption, their negative thoughts brought to the forefront during each fight. Haruka is the final fight due to how she had the most impact on Homura's life, and with her freedom, Orochi is finally taken down. All of its power drained so Asuka can kick its ass. And you know, I gotta bring up something in the Hanzo route. See, there was something Hanzo himself tried to pass on to Asuka, the idea of being a sword and shield. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't predicting the next Pokemon games. And she even heard stories of how badly wounded Hanzo would end up after each battle. One of her arcs was to try and figure out what it meant. And I don't think she ever did until Shinobi Versus, especially since the meaning there was to try and defend her friends while simultaneously repelling the enemy, even at the cost of herself. Homura, on the other hand, seems to have the message set for her character, as she is the one defending her friends and freeing them from Orochi, and doing so to the point of exhaustion, nearly fainting after everything is done since she just went through 5 tough battles in a row, counting Ultimate Asuka. With all of them freed, the gang rejoices they are beaten and tired. However, Homura reveals how she can't rejoin Hebijo due to killing Dogen. Even if he was planning something evil, she kinda lacks proof to help her case and will likely be deemed too dangerous to let live. She wants the others to be happy and elects to stay behind as they go to another headquarters. But of course they don't want to leave behind their leader and proudly stay by her side, even offering up some alternate ideas. Regardless, they would try to form their own group, their own Hebijo, or rather their own family, as they embrace the life of being renegade shinobi.
Renegade for life.
After each story is over, you face off against one of the strongest characters in the game. For Hanzo, you face Daidoji, who, if fought at a low level, can certainly be intimidating, unless you spam attacks that allow you to juggle her. Now, normal characters can break out of this. Not her, however, making her fights the easiest in the entire game unless you do something very stupid. There's really not much story purpose to her fights either, as Rin isn't even brought up. It's just Daidoji looking to fight after seeing Team Asuka beat Hebijo and Orochi, and then a comment about her not being able to graduate just yet. For Hebijo, however, they must face off against their teacher as she tries to make sure they are ready to face the harsh life of being a renegade shinobi, even saying how she is no longer their mentor and would prefer to be called by her true shinobi name, Rin. Her fights are much tougher since she is super fast and can easily break your guard. During these fights, she even gives dialogue about each student, showing she has paid attention despite the limited interactions with them. That's another thing, technically if this is your first time fighting them, you will alternate between all 5 girls. I couldn't do this however since I beat the game, and unless there's a trick I'm missing or something. The fight with Rin did make me wish we saw her acting more as a teacher to the students, kinda like how she had a relationship with Haruka. Fortunately, future games would give more interactions. Other than that, that's basically it. Well, except the DLC, which I can't really recommend. If you have to buy one though, Miyabi's the clear winner, as it contains story content barely covered, albeit altered of course. Yumi's story basically retells Shinobi Versus and some other stuff, but it isn't all that great if you played that one. Plus there are some moments where she felt really out of character. I know I basically repeated some points from the video on Homura, but I hope I at least proved why the Hebijo route is better, despite some of the issues it has. And believe me, replaying and recapping the story really helped me in showing some of the problems. Plus, it does require knowledge of the Hanzo route to really enjoy it. And yet, it's perhaps the best story Senran Kagura has produced, and has yet to be topped in my opinion, with only Shinobi Versus coming close. One of the major problems I had with the series was the lack of doing anything about the Shinobi system, so when people like Asuka just go along with it despite them knowing how wrong it feels, it ends up driving me away from the character. And I remind you, she is the main character of the entire series, no matter how much they push Yumi. Hell, for my copy of the game, Homura is the one on the disc. It's kinda why I love Homura's group, as they are the ones able to challenge those rules and traditions. Rarely do the games ever address this, and thankfully it's brought up in Deep Crimson, only to reset things to the status quo, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like that particular game. Hebijo also has one major problem objectively. The presentation with Homura. You may have noticed Homura doesn't really smile within the game, save for certain pictures or after the game is over with the menu. I get why this was done, to help signify how after her development, she grew to smile much more. The original game kinda did this to a certain extent. However, the original allowed Homura to emote, allowing scenes to have more impact. She wasn't completely dead inside, for God's sake. Thankfully, the writing and acting do help carry the scenes, but this was an incredibly dumb thing to do. If you plan on getting into Senran Kagura, this game is still the best to start with. While there are problematic elements with the presentation, I feel that's only important if you want to just read the story. In that case, just watch everything on YouTube. But this one's gameplay outshines the 3DS by a landslide, no question. However, if you don't plan to play it, I get it. Fan service games aren't everyone's cup of tea, especially with ones featuring teenage girls. But hey, if you stuck out for this long in the review, more power to you. And sorry your search history may be a bit tainted for a while. At least now you know the awesomeness of Sexy Buff Kiryu. But no, really, play Yakuza 2. If you wish to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. The first is through Patreon, where I can continue to provide entertainment and eventually cover other games, like those stuck on a 3DS because Nintendo hates making the recording process easy for handhelds. Alternatively, if you are broke during these trying times, you can always support this channel by liking the video if you enjoyed it, as well as sharing it, commenting, and subscribing. You can even follow me on Twitter to help promote these videos more. I'm the Smartest Moron, and thank you for watching.